A warm welcome to Contemporary Reflexology College. I hope you enjoy this instructional DVD on foot reflexology. Okay, practitioner warm-up exercises. Before you do a treatment and regularly throughout the day, if you're seeing many clients, it's really good to do some loosening movements yourself to look after your own body and your own well-being. So the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to do some shoulder rolls, because your shoulders take a lot of flack when you're actually doing reflexology. So make sure you roll your shoulders back several times a day actually, if you can remember, and forward. Just get your shoulders really lovely and loose. And have a shake, really good shake out. Then just pop your arms behind you and a little stretch behind as well. That can really help as well, just to reverse the position you've been doing as you're working on people's feet. So just stretch behind. Then we're going to stretch one hand out and then just push it down. Just stretches all along the top of the arm, keep the arm nice and straight, and it frees the carpal tunnel as well. And then turn the hand over, facing upwards, and press down. Just gently, not too hard. Do the same with the other hand. Press down, keeping the arm straight. Nice stretch and release there. And with the palm facing up, just press down with the right hand. Okay, then we're going to rotate both wrists, first inwards and then outwards. And just do that a few times both ways, just to help your wrist to keep very nice and loose. And just relax the arms and give them a little shake, let them hang loose. Then we're going to hold both arms in front of us with the arms straight, create a fist. I'm just going to really clench your fist and then release. Clench and release, clench and release, clench and release, just a few times. Then place the fingertips of both hands together and then just push and release, push and release, push and release, push and release. Just shake those down. And then we're going to rotate our thumbs together of both hands, clockwise and anti-clockwise. And the same with the index fingers, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Middle fingers clockwise and anti-clockwise. Ring fingers clockwise and anti-clockwise, and little fingers clockwise and anti-clockwise. And just shake that one down. Then we're going to put the hands in the prayer position. I'm just showing you sideways. And what we're going to do is move our thumbs backwards and forwards. Oops, holding the rest of the hand together. Keep the thumbs together and the other fingers, and just move the index fingers backwards and forwards. Keep the index fingers and the thumbs together. Do the same with the middle fingers. Move those. Keep those together and use the ring fingers to move those backwards and forwards. Hold those, and finally the little fingers, and just rotate those. Really good exercise for the fingers to keep them mobile. Then link the hands. I'm going to do a little wave-like motion. Little wave-like motion, just to really loosen up the arms. And then a couple more shoulder rolls, backwards and forwards, a shake, and finally a flick. Really good, just to flick off any energy that you want to get rid of. Just flick it down to the floor. And take a few nice deep breaths in and out, and you're ready for work. Okay, the first thing we're going to do then is look at hand holds, how to hold and support the foot when you're working with a client. The easiest and the most useful hand hold is palm on pad. Placing the palm of your hand on the metatarsal pad of the client, that gives you good leverage and support, and it helps the client to feel nurtured and safe. Okay, so that's one we're going to use a lot. The next one we're going to look at is medial support. So coming in, this is the spinal reflex. You have your hand holding around the spinal reflex with your thumb coming across onto the diaphragm solar plexus point. Again, that can make the client feel very safe and secure. You can also use a lateral hold, same position with your thumb on the solar plexus diaphragm point and just working from the lateral side. Again, that is a very nurturing and safe hand hold. The next one we're going to look at then is around the ankles. When you're working around the ankles, you need support in front of the malleolus. So make sure that you're actually supporting here with your thumb in front of the malleolus and not up on the leg. If you work on the leg and support the leg, the ankle has too much freedom of movement. So you need to put your thumb in front of the malleolus around the ankle, and that gives you a really good grip there, and again supports everything very safely. The next one we're going to look at is on the toes. When you're working the toes, you need to make sure you support on the dorsal aspect, so support the toes from behind, so that when you're walking down the toes, your hand, your working hand, is pressing onto your holding hand, and that will again give you very good leverage and very good support for the toes. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is talking about hand on hand. I did mention that you've actually got to place your hand on top of your own hand so that you provide more leverage. You don't have to do that everywhere on the foot, but it is good to do that where you can. So for example, if I was working further down the foot, it might be that my hand, my working hand was actually on the dorsum of the foot, providing leverage. That's okay too. Make sure that when you are thumb walking with the leverage, that you don't have your hand flat. Very often, people who are learning at first, they have a flat hand. You need to keep the fingers bent, so the pads of the fingers are actually resting on the foot or on your own hands. That then gives you really good leverage for your thumb walking. Okay, now we're going to look at twisting the foot into the hand while you're actually working. And what we're going to do here is we're going to hold the base of the big toe, and we're going to twist the foot. As we twist the foot, we're going to use our working hand with good leverage and walk across the plantar surface like that. Do you see how I'm twisting the foot? And this means that you're actually increasing the pressure on the client's foot, but without damaging yourself and having to put too much pressure on yourself. So you can do that when you walk medial to lateral. You can do it when you walk lateral to medial. You can also do it when we're working on the spine. You can torque the foot or twist the foot into the spine, into your working thumb. This increases your pressure without putting any strain on your own wrist or thumb. Okay, another technique which we're going to use quite a bit is called linking. And what we're going to do is we're going to link different parts of the foot, either on the same foot or from foot to foot. We can link in any appropriate reflexes. For example, you could link in a spinal nerve reflex, such as L3, with the knee reflex to create an energy link. We always use our middle fingers when we're creating energy links. This is known as your fire finger or energy finger. We could link pituitary points together. We could link the adrenal points together. There are lots of links that we could do, and I'm going to demonstrate those as we progress with the course. Looking at the thumb and finger techniques then, we've talked about leverage. What we need to do now is have a look at thumb walking itself. With the thumb, what we need to do is make sure that we are using the medial side of the thumb when we do this little tiny caterpillar walking. Good leverage and the thumb flat as much as we can, and we're always pressing forward with our little caterpillar walks, with our little bites. So putting that, always practice on your own arm first. It's great if you do that. You can then feel the pressure. The secret of a good reflexologist is to know what type of pressure to apply, whether it's a light pressure, a medium pressure, or a very firm pressure. Always work within the client's tolerance. You mustn't overdo it. We're talking about positive pressure and not pull away pain. When the client starts pulling their foot away and tensing up too much, it's too painful. You need to back off and reduce the pressure. Okay. So let's have a look at thumb walking first then. We're going to do our palm on pad hand hold, and I'm going to just twist slightly to the side on the lateral side. I'm going to create leverage with my working hand resting on top of my holding hand, and I'm going to walk across what we call zone 1 here. So with the thumb, I'm just going to thumb walk little tiny bites. And just check that pressure. Is that pressure okay? That pressure's okay for the client. If I was going to do a light pressure, it would be like that. What I'm doing now is sort of like a medium pressure. And if I was going to do a firm pressure, you can see it really is getting right into the reflexes very deeply. Okay, so that gives you an idea of thumb walking. For finger walking, we use our fingers as often as we can, usually on the dorsal and the medial and lateral sides of the foot. So for example, if I was going to finger walk across zone 5, I would switch my holding hand, support palm on pad, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finger walk using my thumb for leverage and finger walk with my index finger around zone 5, which is the dorsal aspect of the shoulder reflex. Now with finger walking, you tend to keep your finger straight on. And that's just giving you an idea there. Okay, now certain reflexes, when you come to them, they can feel gritty, they can feel puffy, they can feel generally out of balance, not the same as other areas of the foot. And some reflexes, we actually need to work in a different way to thumb and finger walking, or in addition to. And one of them would be the adrenal reflex. The adrenal reflex, which is midway between the waistline guideline and the diaphragm guideline, against the medial longitudinal tendon. What we would do there is we could actually put our thumb onto it and have little rotations clockwise, anti-clockwise, or we could press and what we call sedate the point. We could pulse to stimulate and help the adrenal to produce more of its hormones. We can also feather over it, little tiny bites to feather. If it's very painful, feathering is very useful. We can also rock the foot and twist the foot into that reflex as well. Now we can do that on many reflexes. Some, such as hooking techniques, I wouldn't use on the adrenal gland. A hooking technique I use very rarely actually these days, just to show you what it is. For example, on the pituitary, which is found in the centre of the big toe, we'd support the toe from behind, bring in our hand for leverage. We create a hook with our thumb. We go just below, we know where the pituitary gland is, and then we just drop our wrist all the way down to create a hook. So you can do that mostly on the pituitary, on the ileocecal valve, on the sigmoid flexure, but I've got other techniques I'm going to show you for those as we go through the full treatment. Okay, so that's we've looked at pressure, we've looked at some different little techniques there. One thing I want to mention is speed. When we're nervous, when we're short of time, we tend to speed up. That's not always good. It's good to have a slow, steady rhythm when you're thumb walking. So if you see me on the DVD going quickly, remember I'm probably trying to catch up with time, so just slow down and make each little bite count. That's when you can really make a difference to your client. Okay. Right, what else have I got to show you? Yeah, tiny bites on the toes. When we're thumb walking on the toes, it's very important to make sure that you do lots of tiny little bites. So little tiny bites, count and see if you can have a competition with yourself to see how many tiny little bites you can do working all the way down the toes. And you can count mine on the DVD if you want to when you're watching it for the first time, see how many I do. Next thing I'm going to show you is using the knuckle. As well as the fingers and thumbs, we can also use the side of the knuckle. If you're using the side of the knuckle for sweeping, for example the spine, you're going to need a little bit of cream. We don't use much cream, lotion, or powder or anything like that. If you're going to use powder, make sure it's cornstarch, not talcum powder. And I prefer lotions and creams that are organic and don't contain any nasty chemicals. So using the side of your knuckle, side of your index finger knuckle, use your thumb for leverage and support, and we sweep round. Can you see I'm really supporting the big toe while I'm sweeping around the cervical area? And then coming all the way down. Make each sweep count when you work. Other areas though we'd use the sweeping technique is on the inside and outside of the heel area, on the medial and lateral side of the foot. which corresponds to the pelvic area in the body. So what I would do then is use my thumbs for leverage on the plantar aspect, use the side of the knuckles and sweep towards myself, long sweeping motions. That's absolutely marvellous for getting into the reflexes around the pelvic area. Okay, so that's sweeping. Knuckle press. Right, the heel area on a lot of people can be very, very hard. So it's great to use your knuckles instead of your poor old thumbs. So you can use your knuckles straight on for this, palm on pad hold, and you can get in with little rotations. I've got my thumb for leverage and get right the way into the heel area. You could also come to the side if you wanted to. I'll show you on this foot. You can come around to the side and use the side of the knuckle to get in there. I'm holding around the dorsal of the foot here, and you can also sweep into the heel area there. Okay. Right, what I'd like to do now is actually just show you the location of some of the reflexes. Some of the reflexes that people struggle to find sometimes from the foot maps and foot charts. The first one I'm going to show you I've mentioned already, which is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, it's usually found where the toe is, has its softest part on the pad of the big toe. It's on both big toes. Very often you see it sort of sticking out slightly, and that's where I'd go for. If you haven't got a little sticking out area in that soft pad, then go for the widest part of the toe and where it intersects in the middle, and go for that. Again, support from behind, get your leverage right, bring your thumb in, and then just rotate in until you find that area. And just above that we've got the hypothalamus. The two work together, remember. The hypothalamus is part of the central nervous system, and it's linked to the pituitary by a tiny little stalk called the infundibulum, and it sends messages from the central nervous system to the endocrine system to tell the body which hormones to produce, and the pituitary then produces and releases those into the body. So very good to work that. You can work it with the side of your knuckle if you're not having much response there, so you can work that. And can you see I'm doing a little technique where I'm just pressing down and then pressing up to hit the pituitary and the hypothalamus. Okay. And again, you could link those two together either with your middle finger or your thumb and link the two together. Another reflex I want to show you that people find difficult to locate is the pineal gland. Now, if you from the corner of the big toenail, if you come in at a 45-degree angle, just in about the width of your index finger, I'm going to use the side of my knuckle here because it's not always easy to access. Be careful if anybody's got an ingrowing toenail. And then just little rotations with the side of my knuckle here, supporting the big toe well. Pineal gland, as you're probably aware by now, because we'll be covering this in class, is very good for sleep. So it actually helps to regulate your sleep pattern. So it's good for jet lag, it's good for depression, for SAD syndrome, seasonal affective disorder. It produces the hormone melatonin, and it's really, really important to work for anybody who's suffering with insomnia. Okay, so that's the pineal gland, and you can locate that on both of the big toes. Next one I'm going to look at is the thyroid. Thyroid gland is found in the throat area, either side of the trachea, and we access this on the base of the big toe, just in and above the two creases almost, just below the pad and then the crease of the big toe where it joins the foot. I'm going to do little tiny bites here, little crisscross bites with my thumb, and swap over and come back lateral to medial, medial to lateral, lateral to medial. And I'll get the side of my knuckle and I'm just going to work in there. Thyroid in the centre mostly of the big toe, and the parathyroids embedded on either side of the thyroid. Next one we're going to look at is the thymus. That's always very difficult for people to locate, and on different charts you'll see it in different locations. The thymus is found if you come down the big toe, right down to the head of the metatarsal joint, and then what I'd like you to do is just come in slightly, and you'll actually feel a little dip as you go over the tendon, you feel like a little tendon, and there's a little dip, and then just work that. If you can't find that area, make sure you walk well with your finger or your thumb across that whole of that area to pick up the thymus. Thymus, very important for our immune system, very good for growth for children. So it's a really great reflex to work, that one, for anything to do with illness of any description, or around different times of growth throughout puberty, etc. Okay, then we're going to look at the adrenals. I've already mentioned the adrenals, but just to locate them properly, you've got the diaphragm line here, and you've got the waistline. If you press down on the lateral edge, you feel the protuberance of the fifth metatarsal. That gives you your guideline for the waistline. So diaphragm and waistline guidelines. We're looking at zone 1 and just in zone 1 on the medial aspect, against the medial longitudinal tendon. If you push the foot back, you can feel that tendon. You don't want to be pressing on that. You just come to the side of it, and that's where you're going to locate the adrenal gland. Okay, gallbladder on the right foot. If you push the foot back and straight, the liver comes. There's the waistline guideline. It comes right the way across, right up onto the diaphragm there. And the gallbladder is just underneath, embedded in it. So the best thing to do is to slide your thumb up, and we're looking at about zone 4.5. Slide your thumb up and you'll feel like a little dip almost. You can also access it at the same time from the dorsal aspect. Use your index or middle finger, come between the tendons in zone 4.5, a little bit high, just there, and then hold the two together to create an energy link. And do that for about 30 seconds. Okay. Right, the other one that people find difficult to locate is the ileocecal valve. I'm going to use a little bit of cream for this because I'm going to use the side of my knuckle because it's in the heel area. We're looking at zone 5 on the right foot. The ileocecal valve is the one-way valve between the small and large intestine, right in the area of the appendix. To locate this, if you actually find where the calcaneal bone comes in, it sort of dips in, comes in the most, and in zone 5, that's where you're going to locate it. Now I'm going to switch to the knuckle. I'm going to put the knuckle in that point, and then I'm going to push laterally. If you push laterally, you really locate that area. Okay, and as you've probably learnt in class by now, the ileocecal valve is very important to make sure that it is working correctly. There does seem to be an involvement with a faulty ileocecal valve and people with sinus problems. Okay, the other one I'm going to show you, because that, just following through, that's the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. And the base of the descending colon, which is a really good point to work for people with constipation, is the sigmoid flexure. It's like a U-bend. Everything gets stacked up there if we don't keep that working properly. So the best thing to do here again is to use the side of your knuckle. So we're coming down from the waistline guideline, down the descending colon, into this little U-bend point. I'm just pressing in there. And that's marvellous, as I say, for any digestive problems, but particularly for constipation. Once you've worked that area, you can finish off by coming out rectum, anus. Okay, a little bit of tensing there on the foot, so I was a little bit heavy-handed there for my client. Next reflex to show you is the ovary reflex. Now there are 2 points for the ovary reflex. On most charts you'll actually see the ovary reflex on the lateral side of the foot, midway between the malleolus and the outside edge of the heel, just in there. Now that is a really good point for helping the ovary, and I'm calling it the ovary relative ovary reflex. So relative ovary reflex. The main ovary reflex is actually on zone 3. So 1, 2, 3, zone 3, coming down into the heel, almost on the line with the malleolus if you come round. And that is a really good point for the main ovary. Other charts also have it just underneath the heel. But if you create a little pinch there between the two, you're really going to work the ovary very well. Now the testes point is actually just on that lateral edge, because obviously the ovary is an internal reproductive organ, a gland on the female, and it's outside the body on the male. So there we've got the testes, and that's on both feet, okay? Right, then the uterus prostate reflex is a little bit difficult to locate. If I show you on this foot, midway between the malleolus and the outside edge of the heel, put your index finger there, and it's just in front of that index finger. So it's not as in the lateral side where we located the ovary testes reflex here in the middle. It's actually in front, and that would be the uterus, also the prostate point on men. Okay, so that's just helping you to locate those. I think those are mostly the ones that people have problems with. Oh, the other thing I could show you actually is on the spine. I'll show you on this foot. The spine, because people don't always realise exactly where the vertebra fit onto the spine. Now, starting at the top, the base of the nail and between that distal phalangeal joint, that's where you find the brain stem. So you've got three parts to the brain stem. You've got the medulla, the pons, that's the bridge, and the thalamus, the centre where everything has to go through. So that's the medulla, pons, and thalamus. And then just on this phalangeal joint here, coming down to almost the bunion point here, which is the first metatarsal joint, this will be the cervical. So these are your cervical vertebrae. So you have 8 pairs of cervical nerves, 7 cervical vertebrae. Then from this joint, coming down to the waistline guideline, if you work your way across, it just hits the navicular bone here. That is going to be the thoracic spine. You've got 12 thoracic vertebrae and the corresponding pairs of nerves coming out from between those. So it's on the bone there, but obviously you want to work the whole width of the foot because you've got all of the muscles, supporting muscles and ligaments, etc. there supporting. Then we come to the lumbar area. You've got 5 lumbar bones. Remember, they're really quite big, coming down to the base of the spine, so they get progressively bigger. So you've got L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. Then you come onto the sacrum. You've got the sacrum here, and then right down into the coccyx. Although very often, if people have got any coccyx problems, they've fallen down the stairs or something, you'll find it's crunchy around the whole of the base of the heel area. Okay, so hopefully that will help you to get a little bit orientated. If you use your zones, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, remember you've got all 5 zones in each of the big toes. If you use your zones, use your diaphragm line, your pelvic or heel line, and your waistline guideline with the medial longitudinal tendon. It becomes very easy to locate all of the reflexes from the foot map and foot chart. Okay, and that's the end of this section. Okay, now for the full treatment. Once you've cleaned your client's feet and you've done a full assessment of the feet, it's rather nice just to hold under the heel, around the malleolus, just support the feet, just to connect to your client's energy, and ask your client to take a nice deep breath in and out. And you breathe with them. It's a lovely calming way to start the treatment. Okay. And then we're going to go into some bone loosening movements. And the first thing I'm going to do is start on the left foot. And I'm going to do what's called the metatarsal wave. So I'm pushing in on the metatarsal pad with my thumbs, pulling back on the dorsum with my fingers, and creating a lovely wave effect with my wrists, moving my wrists. So it's very relaxing, but also it's opening up the metatarsals and getting the client used to your hands working on their feet and helping them to feel relaxed at the same time. The next move I'm going to do is pushing and squeezing on the metatarsals. So I'm going to support the foot on the dorsal aspect with my holding hand, make a fist with my right hand, which is in line with the working foot, and I'm going to push on the metatarsal pad and then squeeze with my fingers. Don't squeeze across the toes, i.e. Squish the toes, just squeeze across the metatarsal pad. And once you've done that for about 5 or 6 times, then just work your way down the foot in a nice wave-like motion, just pushing and squeezing as you work your way down the foot and then back up again. And from there, we're going to speed it up a bit, and we're going to go into a flap and slap, where you've got the centre of your palms on either side of the feet, around the metatarsal area. And your outside hand should slap, as you keep them very loose, slap on the top of the foot. And then slide your hands down to just in front, it's like a little groove in front of the ankle joints, the malleolus, medial and lateral, and use your thenar muscles there into the little dip. I'm going to go up and down the leg to create some movement with the ankle. Don't do this if a client has arthritis or problems with their ankles, but generally speaking it's very relaxing and it's a great way to loosen up the ankles. Now what I'm doing is I'm transferring the pressure to the hypothenar muscles, and I'm still up and down, moving my hands up and down the leg to create this ankle loosening movement. Okay, this is known by most people as the ankle boogie. Then I'm going to move into the spinal twist. Now for the spinal twist, normally you come right the way around to the side. Keep your arms straight, wrists down. The lower hand is your supporting holding hand, and the upper hand is going to create the twist. So we're going to move the spine up and down a few times in the same place. Move both hands up together and then twist with the upper hand, moving the spine up a little bit more. Twist again. You can only go up to the bunion point, don't go beyond that. You can't do this on the cervical area, so just the lumbar and thoracic area of the spine. And then go back down to the bottom of the foot and then just twist your way up again. The reason why we keep the lower hand completely steady is that if you're twisting like that, you create too much friction. It's almost like a Chinese burn. Make sure that your thumbs and your hands aren't sliding, that you've got a good firm grip, and you're actually moving the whole of the foot when you do that. Okay, so from the spinal twist, what we're going to do is we're going to support the ankle underneath, and we're going to dorsi and plantar flex the foot, just to stretch the Achilles tendon at the back and just see if we can get all of the tendons moving on the top of the foot and the bottom of the foot. So that's a really good stretch forwards and back. Okay, and then the next one, which is a really lovely relaxing one, is to work the diaphragm. And this is very good for any clients coming to you with stress and tension. And what I'm doing here is I'm using my thumb on the diaphragm line, and I have the handhold palm on pad, and I'm pulling the toes up and on to my thumb as it moves across the diaphragm line. And what you can do with this one, I'm just going medial to lateral and then coming back lateral to medial. If you really wanted to slow it down and somebody was very distressed, you could start with this one and you could actually take them, ask them to take a breath in. So I'll just demonstrate that. If you like to take a nice deep breath in and breathe out. And as they breathe out, release the toes. And breathe in. And breathe out. So you can see if you did that in triple slow motion with them breathing in sync, it could be actually very, very calming and relaxing. Okay, so that's the diaphragm relax and breathe, or sometimes it's called pulling the pint. I'm going to finish off the opening sequence here with some friction. So I'm coming around to the side. I'm actually going to warm up the feet. Sometimes, especially in the winter, people come with very cold feet, and it's quite nice to have a little bit of friction. Also very good for loosening up the tendons. So friction across the foot and up and down the foot. It warms you up, warms the client up, and warms the feet up, ready for work. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the left foot over, keep it nice and warm for the client. And I'm going to repeat the sequence on the right foot. I won't say anything, and I'm just going to work through this. I can't quite get round to the side to do the friction, but hopefully you can see the idea. Normally it's best to move your chair right round to the side for that one. Right, now we're going to stay on the right foot and we're going to work the chest, lung, breast, heart area on the plantar aspect. So I'm going to use my palm on pad handhold, move my hand round to the side, push the toes back slightly, and I'm going to walk across zone 1. Now I hope you've noticed I've not used any cream or oil yet. If I do feel that I need some, I'll put a little bit on. At the moment I don't. So I've got my leverage on the top of the foot, just walking across zone 1 here, right the way down underneath the toe to the diaphragm line. And then I'm going to spread the toes to come up between zones 1 and 2, from the diaphragm line to the base of the toes. This area here, it's actually known as relative to the thyroid, a thyroid helper area. It often shows up as very crunchy and painful if people have got an underactive thyroid. Also a very good point to work for the bronchial area, and often it shows up as very crunchy on smokers. And then just coming up between zones 2 and 3. And 4 and 5. Then I'm going to swap hands, push the little toe back, and I'm going to thumb walk from the base of the little toe across zone 5 until I come under the little toe, which is the equivalent of the shoulder blade. I'm going to spread the toes again, push the little toe out and come up between zones 5 and 4. I'm doing this a couple of times. You can just do it one if somebody hasn't got any problems here, but it's quite nice when you're starting out to do it a few times, and also it's a very relaxing area to work. People always go into tension with their breathing when they're in pain and when they're stressed. So I'm going to finish that area now with double thumb walking. This means walking with both thumbs at the same time. I'm going to come under the big toe and then right the way down almost onto the diaphragm line. Use my fingers for leverage on the dorsum, and I'm going to, with my wrists, move my wrists in and double thumb walk across. So I finish up on the opposite side of the foot, and then I'm going to swap. So I'm going to start right down underneath the base of the big toe, and then just underneath the little toe, and I'm going to double thumb walk again across. So that works that area really well. Then I'm going on to the dorsal aspect, and the first thing I'm going to do is come down between the tracks. This is very good for lymphatics, for the back muscles, and this technique is a push and press technique. So what I'm going to do is push down and out. So I'm sort of pressing down and then pushing out. What this does is this actually hits both sides of the bones coming down the tracks. So we're hitting all the nerve points, things like the brachial plexus, which feed into the shoulders. We're actually working not just the lymphatics, but everything like the back muscles. Coming down between zones 1 and 2 is good for whiplash. Also the intercostal muscles between the ribs. So it's a really useful technique for getting right into those areas. And also the breast as well, you can access on the top of the foot. Next thing I'm doing is little circles. So all the fingers together in the tracks on the dorsal aspect of the foot, and doing little circles down. And you can alternate the tracks, so you can use both hands at once doing little circles. I'm just going to swap over here, going between zones 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, until the whole area of the top of the foot is covered in that way. And next I'm going to create a little V shape with my fingers, my thumbs on the plantar aspect, my fingers on the dorsum, and I'm going to finger walk with all of the fingers in unison, coming down almost like a snow plough, coming right the way down to the ankle. And when I reach the ankle, I'm going to press in and push the foot forward. this accesses all of the meridian points that run through the ankle. And very, very useful for helping to balance the body's energy. So back to the top again and snowplow down. And then push into and around the ankle. Then I'm going back to the top of the foot to really work the shoulder area. Now we have already walked across zone 5, but it's good to go back to this point. You often find this very gritty, very crunchy on people. The shoulders take a lot of weight. We don't always look after our upper body, and therefore it's really good to give this a bit of a thorough workout. Then I'm going to work the dorsal aspect of the shoulder reflex with my index finger. And then I'm going to do a side knuckle sweep, and for this I need a little bit of cream or lotion. So a little bit of cream on the shoulder reflex, using inside of my index finger, thumb for support, and I'm going to work all the way around. You feel all the crunchy, gritty bits there. And just really work that shoulder well. You've also got the arm, which I'm going to come back to. I'm going to actually work down to the elbow a little bit later in the sequence. What I'm going to do from here is move across from the shoulder to the trapezius, which is the muscle that connects the shoulder with into the neck. So I'm thumb walking on the top of the metatarsal pad, just under the toes, a few times, lateral to medial. Swap hands, come back medial to lateral a couple of times, and then lateral to medial again. And from the trapezius, I'm going into the neck, the side of the neck muscles, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And I'm thumb walking round there. But also, which is quite good, is to just do little rotations and circles into that muscle and really help that to release. I'm going to work under the occipital ridge, the occiput, which again holds a lot of tension for people. I'm going to do that on the plantar and the dorsal, just under the thumb nail, sorry, not the thumb, the big toenail, just under there for the occipital ridge. Next is the brainstem. So I'm sure you can see this. I have demonstrated this already, but this is 3 little bites just above that distal phalangeal joint to the base of the nail, and we've got the medulla, the pons, and the thalamus. From there I'm going into brain rolls, so I'm going to roll across the tips of all of the toes, starting with the big toe, using my index finger. Use your predominant hand for this. Support the toe well that you're working on. Use your index finger to create the roll. Support it underneath with your thumb and on the top with your middle finger. Start at the medial edge and then just roll over the top of the toe. Lift your finger off and roll again, just to cover that whole area. Really good to get the circulation going to the top of the brain, the skull. And then moving on to the next toe. Cover across there. And just do the same on all the tips of the toes. And then we go back to the big toe to walk down the zones. So it's best to support the toe well from behind, and then use your own hand as leverage on top of your holding hand, and walk down each zone. I'm going to start with zone 1, and you want to do tiny little bites. Make sure you're not straining your shoulder and your elbow. Bring your elbow down with you as you come down, right the way down to the base of the toe. I'm just coming down zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, and the lateral edge, zone 5. And then, having walked on the big toe, I'm just going to access the pituitary and hypothalamus. You can do this with your thumb. If you've got somebody who's very sensitive, I suggest you use your thumb. going to the middle of the big toe. So just in the pads there, where it sinks in, just a really good rotate into there with your thumb, and then just slightly higher for the hypothalamus. If you find that it's not getting in there, then use the side of your knuckle, just the side of it. It's a good tool, that. And just support with your thumb, press down and press up. That's guaranteed to wake your clients up if they're falling asleep on you. Okay, then we're going to go to the pineal gland. So we want the medial side of the big toe, the top of the nail, come in at a 45-degree angle, use the side of your knuckle and just little rotations into the pineal gland. And I'm moving down to the thyroid at the base of the neck. I'm just working across on the plantar aspect with tiny little crisscross thumb walks both directions. Just knuckle in slightly into the middle, and then you also walk that on the dorsal aspect. And have a little sweep round the edge there of the thyroid on the medial side with the side of your knuckle. Then we're going to go on to all of the toes to cover sinuses. Now use whichever hand feels comfortable for you. I've been using my right hand a bit, so I'm switching to my left. As long as the toe is supported from behind, that's absolutely fine. Tiny little bites from the tip of the toe right down to the base. You probably need about 3 on each of the little toes, depending on the size of the toes and the size of the foot. If you've got very tall, long toes, sort of almost like telescopic toes, then it's best to thumb walk up those toes, especially for those who've maybe got claw or hammer toes. It's very difficult to walk down them. Now my support from behind is going to disappear here, so I'm swapping hands to the little toe and just coming down all sections of the little toe. Cover that area. Just to show you walking up the toes, you can walk up the toes like that. You can do it with either thumb or alternate the thumbs. So whichever you prefer, either walking down the toes, walking up them, as long as you work them thoroughly, and the sides. Sides are really good for the teeth. If you've got tooth problems, very good to work the sides of the toes. Now we're going to work the dorsal aspect of the toes next. When you come down the dorsal aspect, it's good to start at the base of the nail and just rotate your index fingers in there. Just give a little press in. The meridian points start and finish, not all of them, but the ones that start and finish on the feet actually are found at the base of the nails on the corners. And then we just want to roll down, so press in and roll down using my thumbs for leverage on the plantar aspect, and then walking down the dorsum with 2 fingers simultaneously. So pinch at the base of the nail and then thumb walk down, just like a rolling action. It's using your wrist a lot here. The same with the next toe. And the little toe. I'm just going to have a little pinch at the base of each of those toes. That helps with the lymphatic drainage around here. So a little pinch. Then I'm going to use my index finger and I'm going to go in between each toe. In between the 4th and 5th toe, you pick up the ear here, the internal ear, and then coming along in between the next 2, the 3rd and 4th toe. Still for the ear. This tends to be more sort of eustachian tube area. And then coming under between the 3rd and 2nd toe, you've got the eye reflex, and all the way underneath that 2nd toe, eye reflex. When you come in between the big toe and the 2nd toe, it tends to be a little bit more muscular there, coming right the way into the sternocleidomastoid muscle, where it joins the neck there. Okay, and then I'm going to sweep up between the toes. It can be very relaxing, that, and a nice way to just to make sure that you've hit all the edges. of the toes. And finally, I'm going to do some toe rotations. So for this, I'm going to support the joints at the base of the toe, and I'm going to create a little sandwich of the toe between my thumb and index finger, and I'm going to lift the toe slightly and then rotate. I'm starting at the little toe and I'm rotating towards the big toe. I'm doing this because it helps with the lymphatic flow towards the subclavian vein, the thoracic duct around the neck. Next toe in the same way. Make sure that you do have all the toe encased in your index finger and your thumb. Don't just rotate and lift from the tip, because that can be too damaging for people with arthritis or toe problems. And when I get to the big toe, I'm going to rotate in towards the other toes. A nice rotation inwards again to help with the lymphatic flow. Okay, so I've finished that area on that foot. I'm going to cover that one over, and I'm going to go over and repeat that sequence on the left foot. So just warming this foot up again. A little bit of friction, a little bit of effleurage. And I'll run through this without saying anything, just to let you look. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the plantar aspect, the abdominal area. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to work up all of the zones. Starting at zone 1, I'm going to work from the heel up to the diaphragm line. So push the foot back and straight towards the client using the palm on pad handhold, and the thumb walk up zone 1. Now if you find that difficult and it's quite a hard area, just slightly move the foot into the hand. That helps to take off any strain on your thumb, and you still give a good pressure there to your client. So try it either just without keeping the foot still, or try it with just rocking the foot gently into your working thumb. See which you prefer and which your clients prefer. And you can swap your hands at any time if your thumbs get tired. Try to use your left and right hand alternately as much as possible, so that you're not using one too much more than the other. It's really good actually across the foot, medial to lateral side. It's quite good if you can just twist the foot in gently as you thumb walk, because it takes the pressure off your joints if you do that. If you're just thumb walking like that, it can be a little bit harder on your joints. So just gently twist the foot as you create each little thumb walk there. So we're doing medial to lateral. We're going to go from the diaphragm line down to the pelvic line. We're going to leave the heel for now and come back to that. Okay, and I'm just going to swap hands. A little bit more awkward to twist from medial to lateral, but you can still manage it, so just take it slow and thumb walk and twist at the same time. Just want to make sure you cover the whole of the abdominal area on the feet. If you have somebody with very prominent tendons, just ease off as you go over the tendons, because it can be quite painful for them. It's nice if you get a rhythm going. It can be very relaxing then for your client. Then we're going to look at the internal organs that we've got here and just get a little bit orientated. So obviously that's the diaphragm line. So if you're looking at the digestive system, you've got the mouth here in just sort of below the distal phalangeal joint. You've got the mouth, and then coming down the esophagus, coming down into the stomach, just around, just before you get to the point between zones 1 and 2 where the solar plexus is. So you've got the stomach, which is that J-shaped organ, and coming down to the waistline. Then you've got a little bit of the duodenum on the right foot, which then feeds back into the intestines around here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually walk the stomach reflex. I often find that if it's very tender here, it might be indicative of somebody suffering with a hiatus hernia, but of course we can never diagnose. It just sometimes is good to think of these things as we're working over them. So each organ or gland, work from every direction that you can. So work medial to lateral, lateral to medial, and then work up to cover that particular organ. It's like a packed suitcase in there in your abdominal area, with one organ sitting on top of the other. But if you place your intent that you're working the stomach, then usually that will make an effect. Right, I'm going a little bit further over here now, between zones 4 and 5, and working the spleen, part of the immune lymphatic system. I'm just going to work that well from all directions. And then we've got the pancreas. Pancreas sits just on top of the waistline guideline and goes across towards the spleen. So I'm just going to work the pancreas. Very important for digestive enzymes and for balancing your blood sugar. Just working the pancreas. I'm going to locate the adrenals next, so midway between the diaphragm line and the waistline guideline, and then right in the middle of the two against that medial longitudinal tendon. So I'm just going to do little rotations there. I'm just going to torque the foot onto that. It'll be tender in most people, but if they're very, very stressed or have a lot of inflammation in their body, it'll be extremely painful. So back right off and treat it gently. And I'm going to cover that foot over, and I'm going to move on to the right foot. Let's do the same area. So what I'm going to do first is walk up the zones. So zone 1, from the heel up to the diaphragm line, because we've worked above that. So I'm just going to thumb walk this area. And as I said before, if you feel it's easier on your thumbs and on your leverage to actually just rock the foot into your working thumb, I think that's quite nice. Just gets a nice rhythm going. And if your thumb gets tired, then just swap. And if you can't reach, if you've got working on a big foot, then just swap, as I'm doing now. And then we're going to work across the foot from medial to lateral, and we're going to have a little twist there. So we're twisting the foot into our thumb as it walks across the foot, and just get a nice rhythm going. You don't have to twist the foot, but it does make it more comfortable for you and the client. And we're doing that right down to the pelvic or heel guideline. And again, watch as you go over the tendons. And then we're going to come back lateral to medial. This is the point, if you've got long nails, this is where the client will feel if you're thumb walking and the nail goes in. So if you haven't managed to file your nails down, then make sure you don't overstretch with your thumb. Keep it fairly flat and don't go too far with it. It might be best not to rock if you've got long nails. Hopefully you won't, since you should have filed them down. Okay, now we're going to look at each of the organs and glands on the right foot in this part of the body, so just below the diaphragm and above the heel line. So what we've got here is we've got a little tiny bit of the pancreas on the right foot. We've got the duodenum just on the waistline guideline, just around there and below. That's the duodenum. And then we've got the liver, very large organ. I'm going to walk across the whole of that area to contact the liver. You can do your walking and twisting if you want to. I'm going to come back lateral to medial. Do a little twist here. And then we're going to work the gallbladder, zones 4 and a half, slide up into the little dip, and then contact it. I'm just going to contact with my middle finger on the dorsal aspect and just hold for about 30 seconds. Sometimes somebody will feel something in their body as it releases some bile. You might hear a little noise as it shifts as well. Okay, and then to the adrenal gland, again midway between the diaphragm and waistline guideline against the medial longitudinal tendon, and just gently twist the foot onto your thumb, or do little thumb rotations or little pulses, depending on what that client needs at the time. Then we're going to work the urinary system. So we're going to start with the bladder. I've got the bladder here on the medial aspect. I've got the ureter tubes coming up on the medial side of the tendon, and then the kidney above and below the waistline guideline on the lateral side of the tendon, around zones 2 to 3, in line with the eye reflexes. Okay, so we're going to walk across the bladder from the dorsum to the plantar aspect. So walk across that well. Some people it can be quite puffy. And then bring your hand underneath and walk up with your thumb till you're above the waistline guideline. Just check where it is. Go over the tendon without putting any pressure on the tendon and walk across zones 2, 3 there, above and below the waistline guideline. Swap hands. Come back lateral to medial across the kidney. Walk up the kidney reflex. And then swap hands to support underneath the heel. Take your thumb over the tendon and walk down the ureter tube back to the bladder. Do that a couple of times. And then sweep down. And a couple of sweeps there. And that's the urinary system. Then we're going to work the heel area. And we're going to do the heel area with a little bit of cream and using some knuckle rotations. So I'm just going to work in there with my knuckle and work in a circular motion just to cover that whole area. Now, as you can imagine, this is the base of the body. So we've got the buttocks here, we've got the coccyx, you've actually got a sciatic nerve running through it in a band across there like that. So it's everything coming down to the base of the body. And what I'm going to do then, after I've worked that well, I can actually come underneath the heel. Actually, if you come underneath the heel, sometimes that's a really good area to work for hemorrhoids. So just work underneath the heel as well. And then we're going to side knuckle into the intestines in the middle of the foot. I'm just going to work all the way around those. That's the small intestine. And then we're going to go to the ileocecal valve, which is the start of the large intestine. Find the area where the calcaneal bone just moves in there, just dips in. Get your thumb on the edge and push laterally. Slide up and push laterally, and that will really contact the ileocecal valve. Okay, right, so we've just done the ileocecal valve, and now we're going to walk up the ascending colon with our thumbs, leverage underneath, under the heel. So up to the waistline guideline, and then at the waistline guideline, we're going to turn to go across the waist for the transverse colon. That little turning there is known as the hepatic flexure, and then we've got the transverse colon. Just going across the waistline there. And now we're going to switch on to the left foot. So back to the left foot. And on the left foot, we're going to work across the transverse colon. And then down the descending colon. Now it's quite difficult to walk down, so we're coming from the lateral side. If you find that awkward or difficult, walk up the descending colon. It's not going to really make a huge difference because we're going to sweep down it afterwards. The little bend here, where you come from the transverse colon and then down to the descending colon, that's known as the splenic flexure because it's underneath the spleen. So go down the descending colon to the sigmoid colon, and I don't know if you remember, but in the little clip of showing you where to locate reflexes, we're looking at zone 3.5, 1, 2, 3.5, and right down into the heel area for the sigmoid flexure, that little U bend. And then we're going to go up to the rectum anus, behind the bladder there on the medial aspect. Let me just show you that from the side. So across there, so you've got the bladder there, you've got the rectum anus there, and you've got the vagina and penis right in the middle there. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and work over the heel area. So just a little bit of cream on there, and then get my knuckles in to do knuckle rotations around the heel area. And then I'm going to sweep underneath the heel, and then come to the side to work around the heel and the intestines. So make sure the intestines are done there well. There we go. And then we're going to do the urinary system, starting with the bladder on the left foot. So walk from the dorsum to the plantar aspect. Up the ureter tube, over the tendon. I'm going to walk the kidney from all angles. Walking up, back down the ureter tube, sweep down into the bladder. Right, we're going to stay on the left foot. I'm going to work the spine. First thing we're going to do is tap up and down the spinal reflexes. And then we're going to start at the base of the spine, at the sacrum coccyx, and we're going to thumb walk, but as we thumb walk, we're going to rock the foot into our working thumb. Make sure your leverage is under the heel. I'm just going to rock gently the foot as I thumb walk up the spine. Now what I'm going to do is do this in sections. So I'm going to do the coccyx and the sacral area first, and then coming on to the lumbar area. So I'm covering the whole width of that area. When you can't go up any further with your leverage underneath the heel, switch your leverage onto the top of the foot, and you're going to twist the foot into your thumb as it works, as it walks up that area to the waistline. When you get to the waistline guideline, you're onto the thoracic vertebra. It's quite good to count the number of bones there are in the vertebra as well, so that you are actually covering that whole area. It's going to be about 3 or 4 passes to cover the width of the spine and all the muscles. When you get to the bunion point, you're onto the cervical area, and because the bones are so tiny, it's actually quite good to switch to your finger. So just finger walk up the cervical area. Just to the base of the big toenail. I'm just walking across that area too. And then we're going to walk down the spine, but instead of using our thumb, we're going to use our finger. We're going to use our thumb for leverage, and I'm starting up on the big toe here, and it's almost like a little pinching, rocking action. The thumb will come down behind for leverage. So I'm coming right the way down the spine. I think I'm going a little bit deep there, so I'm just going to back off. I'm going to go back and finish that thoracic area, going both sides of the bones, and then onto the lumbar vertebra. Okay, making sure I'm covering the width of the foot, and then into the sacrum and coccyx. You really need to use your wrist for this one. Just let your wrist go. So we've gone up the spine and down the spine. Now we're going to go across the spine. So I'm using all my fingers, walking together, unison to go across the spinal reflex up to the bunion point, because we walked across the cervicals with our index finger earlier. Then we're going to put a little bit of cream on. And we're going to sweep round all the vertebra, picking up all the muscles. Use your thumb for leverage and make sure you support well over the toes. And because we've worked that quite well, we're going to stretch it out now with a spinal twist. So any of the moves that we do in the opening sequence can be used also throughout the treatment as well. Especially if you've forgotten where you're going next, it's quite good just to do a little bit of massage in between. Okay, now we're going to work down the lateral edge of the foot. You're probably going to see this better on the right foot, but I'm just working on the left foot for the moment. So we're working down the lateral edge, and we're going to do that same rocking motion that we did coming down the spinal reflex. Very often this lateral edge is referred to as the lateral spine, because a lot of the points on here can actually really help with back problems and backache. You've got the urinary bladder meridian running down the outside of the foot here, and the urinary bladder meridian on the body runs down either side of the spine, and is really good for working for back problems, particularly pain. When you reach the protuberance of the fifth metatarsal, that's where the elbow is located, so just rotate round and onto that, a little bit underneath as well if you can. So just a little rotation onto the elbow reflex, and then carry on rocking down. You need about 3 passes again down the lateral edge to cover that effectively. Then I'm going to use all the fingers again together to walk across the dorsal aspect on the lateral side. So from zone 5 to about zone 3, swap hands and walk back. You might need to move your chair a little bit to get yourself in the best position for this. Now I'm going to locate the knee reflex. So coming down the lateral edge, just onto that protuberance of the fifth metatarsal, go over the tendon, and then there should be a little dip. And if you go into there, that's where you're going to find the knee reflex. So just little rotations around on the knee reflex. And then if you switch to your thumb, and then just tip your thumb back, behind that you've got the psoas muscle. So then switch back to your finger and just work the psoas muscle. All this area is really good for the leg, the knee, the hip, the thigh. So I'm going to come under the malleolus. I've switched hands, if you can see, to use my finger to come towards me and under the malleolus. You can really hit the hip reflex there if you do that. Right, now I'm going to cover this foot over, and I'm going to go back to the right foot for the spine on the medial and the lateral side. So the first thing we're going to do is tap the spine. So I'm going to just tap up and down the spine a few times. This just sensitises all the nerve endings and gets it ready for work. And I'm going to start at the base and thumb walk with twisting the foot into my working thumb. And first of all I'm going to do the coccyx area and the sacral area. And then I'm going to move my hand over to the top of the foot, and I'm going to do the lumbar vertebra, which takes us up to the waistline, making sure I work across that whole width of the foot there so I don't miss anything out. Then switching on to the thoracic area. Remember, this is the investigatory session you do when you first start with a new client, just to find out what's going on. It's like an exploratory session. After that, you'll be creating a bespoke treatment plan. So don't sort of linger when you find disturbed reflexes at this stage, just make a note of them. I've also done the thoracic spine there, from the waistline up to the bunion point, with the 12 vertebrae there. You can count them just to make sure you've done enough passes. Then I'm using my index finger to go from the bunion point up to the brain stem, covering the cervical vertebra. So walking up there with my finger, and then across the reflex there with my index finger. And then I'm going to switch to my middle finger to finger walk down with this rolling action, this sort of rocking and rolling action, using my thumb on the plantar aspect for leverage, and that comes down behind. Support the toes well with your holding hand, and just work all the way down the thoracic vertebra. Make sure you cover the whole width of the spine there. So you're picking up all the nerve innervations, all the muscles. There's a few little points there coming down that are tender, I can feel. And when you get to the waistline, remember we switch on to the lumbar vertebra, with big supporting bones at the base of the spine, around just below the waistline. So working well for the width there. Make sure you get all the muscles. And then we go into the sacrum and the tailbone, the coccyx. And then we walk across the spine with all of our fingers in unison, just making sure we've not missed anything there. Really important to work the spine well, as the nerves have an effect on everything in the body. We've already done the cervical, so we don't need to go too high. Then a little bit of cream or lotion, just rub it onto the spinal reflex, and we're going to use the side of our index finger knuckle to sweep around the whole of that spinal reflex. Just make sure we're picking everything up there. And once we've done that, we're going to finish the spinal area with a spinal twist. Then we switch to the lateral side of the spine, the lateral edge of the foot, and we're going to just rock down with our middle finger, making sure our thumb is there for leverage and support. Just going to make sure I cover all the width of that lateral edge so I don't miss anything. So I've gone down to the protuberance of the fifth metatarsal. That's the elbow point, so just work around that. Just rotate onto that and underneath as well if you can. And then carry on, working down to the base of the heel. Again, about 3 passes should do it. If you've got a very large or very wide foot, you might need more. Then we're going to finger walk over the dorsal aspect of the foot, from lateral to medial, from zones 5 to 3. Swap hands and come back over the other side, using all your fingers, walking in unison. going to locate the knee reflex, so just find the protuberance of the fifth metatarsal, just underneath where you go into the cuboid notch, but go straight up onto the dorsal, you go over a tendon and then into like a little dip there, and that's where you locate the knee reflex. Switch it to your thumb and just tip your thumb back, and then you just hit the psoas muscle, which you can then work with your index finger. Work that well. And finger walk around that whole area for the leg, the thigh, the hip. And make sure you come round the malleolus. I'm going to swap hands to come underneath, so I really hit that hip reflex just there, just under the malleolus. I'm going to carry on this right foot, and I'm going to carry on the position I am. I'm just going to rock the foot laterally into all of my fingers as they walk up this external pelvic area. So it's a bit like patting your head and stroking your tummy. You need to sort of practice this just to get this movement coordinated, but it's very effective when you do. And I'm going to locate the testes reflex, which is also relative to the ovary, which is midway between the malleolus and the outside edge of the heel. There's a little dip there. Put your index finger in there, or your middle finger, depending on the size of the foot you're working on. And then find the direct ovary reflex in zone 3 on the plantar aspect into the heel area. And just create a little link between the two, and just hold that for 30 seconds. Okay, and then we're going to finger walk, pushing the foot back towards the client. Finger walk right the way up over the top of the foot. And this will pick up the fallopian tubes, seminal vesicles, vas deferens, and we're heading towards the medial aspect, right the way down to the uterus and prostate reflex. And if you swap your fingers, you actually usually find yourself right on it. The uterus and prostate reflex, it's midway between the medial malleolus and the outside corner of the heel, but literally just in front of the two. So if you do follow that line over the foot, you usually come straight onto that reflex. Just work around that, or you can torque the foot into that with your index finger working it, or the middle finger. And it's really good to create an energy link between these points. So we've got the uterus and prostate on the medial, and on the lateral or outside edge we've got the ovary testes point, and then we've got the other ovary point, which is the main ovary point, on zone 3 right into the heel. So I'm using both middle fingers and my thumb just to create a three-way link of the energy there on the pelvic area. Very good for helping to balance the reproductive system. Okay, so after about 30 seconds of holding that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to finger walk the medial side, all our fingers walking together as much as you can, reaching around there with rocking the foot into your walking fingers, just to make sure we've covered everything on that internal pelvic area. Then we're going to use all of our fingers again, walking from both of the pelvic sides, medial and lateral, to go across the top of the foot in front of the ankle to meet in the middle. And this picks up all the lymph area, lymphatic groin area. And next we walk up both sides of the leg. Normally it's about 6 inches, but really go as far as you can up the leg, which is comfortable for the client. On the medial side, it's really good for any chronic uterus prostate conditions. On both sides, it's fabulous to work these for sciatic problems. It creates, with the sciatic nerve line in the heel, it creates what's known as the sciatic stirrup. So you've actually got areas to work which are really helpful for people with sciatica, all the way down both sides and across the heel. There's also a point on the medial side which is really good for balancing the reproductive system. If you push the foot back and you go about a client's width of their fingers, forefingers, so if you put forefingers just above the malleolus of the client's, not yours, and there's a little dip, a little spot just there, which is the meridian point spleen 6. Now it's contraindicated during pregnancy, so please don't work that if your client is trying to get pregnant or may be pregnant. But if not, otherwise it's a really, really good point to work, where the spleen, kidney and liver meridians converge. Okay, so after that, what we're going to do is we're going to side sweep both sides of the pelvic area. So we need a little bit of cream or lotion for this, and rub that round. Then use the inside of our index finger with our thumbs on the plantar aspect for leverage, and we're going to sweep both sides of the foot thoroughly. Now on the medial side, there's a couple of points which are really good to inform you of. And I'm just going to tilt the foot over slightly. Right against the calcaneal bone, in 2 lines working across here, can you feel that's quite tender for the client, is the pudendal plexus. Plexus is a knot of nerves. These are the nerves that feed into the pelvic area. And the pudendal nerve actually innervates the rectum, anus area, or the anus area, the bladder sphincter. It's really good for male and female orgasm, so it's a really good point to work. To help everybody actually, so make sure you work that well. Very good for stress incontinence too. And then just above where the calcaneal bone comes in to the heel, you just press down, up and down and back. Oh, sorry, just got it. That's the direct sciatic nerve point. Obviously my client felt that, which is great. So a really good point there for anybody with back problems and sciatica, just to work into there. Okay. So I'm just going to finish that with some lovely sweeps again, and sweep all the way round the ankle. And then we're going to cover that foot over, and we're going to do the pelvic area on the left foot. Okay, so now we're going to work the lateral heel and pelvic area with finger walking and rocking. So I'm just doing this on the lateral side. And then I'm going to locate the relative ovary reflex, so midway between the lateral malleolus and the heel. There's a little dip in the middle. That's the good point for the testicle and for a helper area for the ovary. The key ovary area is in zone 3 on the plantar aspect, and there's also an additional one under the heel, but we're just going to hold those two together and just rotate. You can torque the foot slightly into that ovary testes area as well. Then we're going to walk across the top of the foot. I'm going to finger walk across and over. That's for the fallopian tube, seminal vesicle, vas deferens, towards the uterine reflex on the medial aspect. Move your chair around if you need to access that point, and push the foot back well. Then we come onto the medial side, and on the medial side we're going to locate the uterus prostate point, so midway between the medial malleolus and the outside edge of the heel, but just in front. So if you've actually walked across the foot correctly, you'll hit that spot, but if not, just create that line, go in front, and there you are on the uterus prostate point. So just rock the foot and rotate it into that point as you work that area, and then link them all together. So you've got your middle finger linking the uterus prostate with your middle finger on the relative ovary and testicle point, and the ovary point on the plantar aspect in zone 3. And just hold those for about 30 seconds. Sometimes you feel a buzzing, sometimes the client feels a warmth. Whatever they feel is right for them, and whatever you feel is right for you. So don't worry about it. Then we're going to finger walk on the medial aspect. So rock the foot into all your fingers as they walk up that medial aspect on the pelvic area. So 3 or 4 times, just make sure that's covered well. And then we're going to use both hands with all fingers coming across the foot in front of the ankle to work the lymph groin area. Next we walk up the lateral and medial edges of the foot against the bone. So on the medial side we have the helper chronic area, or helper area for chronic conditions that affect the uterus and prostate, and also sciatica, and also the lateral side for any sciatic problems. And again we have that point, the meridian point spleen 6, in a little dip against the bone on the medial side, which is about the client's 4 fingers width above the malleolus. Again, contraindicated during pregnancy. Please don't work that if anybody's pregnant. We use it actually to help in the last stages or the very last stage of pregnancy when the baby is due, and to see if we can encourage the baby to come if it's overdue. Right, next thing we're going to do is put a little cream on, and we're going to side sweep the pelvis with the inside edge of our index finger knuckles. So really lovely sweeps towards you and round. Just work that whole area. And on the medial side, we're just going to focus on the pudendal plexus. Really good for all the pelvic organs. And then up and down and into the sciatic nerve point, just there on the top of the calcaneal bone. Okay, so back to sweeping. And carry on, sweep up the medial lateral spine. And then I'm going to get some cream and we're going to do a nice closing massage. So plenty of cream now. You can go mad with cream or oil, whatever you've got. Make sure you don't get it on your client's clothes. And it's great if you can actually massage up to the knee, because you've got all the extrinsic muscles in the leg that are operating the foot. So it's great if you can work into the calf. Now watch, if somebody's got edema or lymphedema, you have to be very careful. So I'm talking about the average client with no swelling. If you have got somebody with lymphedema or edema, we'll be covering these points and how to work them when we do the specialism day on adapting reflexology for cancer and palliative care. So in the meantime, just massage on anybody that's actually not got a major health problem in the legs. Also be aware of varicose veins, phlebitis, cellulitis, all these sort of contraindicated or conditions that are precautions. Just be careful with those. So I'm just going to use both hands to really work into the leg. We want to make sure that we're hitting all the meridians that are running up from the foot through the leg to the rest of the body, and just help the energy flow and the circulation towards the heart. So it's very freeform this, so you do what feels right for you in the way of massage at the end. And this cream sinks in quite quickly, so I'm just going to get some more and massage around the foot. That's just getting all the knots of any remaining tension out of the feet. Hopefully by now your client's very relaxed though. They've had a good workout. So this is like the cool down after the session. And I'm just going to cover that foot over while I move on to the right foot and do a closing massage on the right foot. So some more cream, leg first. If you can massage up into the back of the knee to the popliteal nodes, that really does help with any congestion in the leg. If you find it easier to stand up and do this, then do stand up and do it. And make sure you're not going to strain yourself. If you feel it's too much for you, then just do a very light, gentle massage. Just working back into the back of the calves here, really to help all those extrinsic muscles. I'm making sure I'm picking up all the meridian points, heading up the leg from the feet to the rest of the body, and vice versa. And then onto the foot, cream and a nice deep massage into the foot. So switch your focus between the dorsum and the plantar. On the sides of the foot, make sure it's all well covered. It's very free form, so you do any of the moves that feel right for you for this. And in class we'll look at different moves that you can do as well to enhance your treatment at the end. And then I'm going to bring both feet together, or work both feet together, work bimanually, massage together. We've been switching from foot to foot, trying to cover the systems, but it's quite nice now to bring the 2 feet together and massage round. So I'm going to work down and into the centre of the foot, coming down each of the zones. This helps with lymphatic drainage and just feels really nice to balance the foot out. And then little circles round. I'm going to finish up by holding the solar plexus point between zones 1 and 2 on the diaphragm. Just little rotations in, and I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to ask my client to take a nice deep breath in. Now remember, if they've got asthma, they have to breathe in their own time, or they might prefer not to do the breathing if they have respiratory troubles or problems. So with this client, I'm just going to ask her to take a nice deep breath in. And while the client breathes in, I'm pressing on the solar plexus, and then breathe out. And then I'm just releasing the pressure, but not all the way. And another nice deep breath in. It might help if you breathe in and out with your client, and breathe out. And one more, nice deep breath in, and hold it, and breathe all the way out. That's lovely. And then I'm just going to place my palms on the pad of the client's feet and just hold for a few moments. You can hold for as long as you like actually, because it's very nurturing, very calming, and it's a good way to signify the end of the treatment. And now to break off from the feet, you can either just pull back, or you can stroke up, lift up at the top. And what I like to do is just stroke the top of the foot, little circles, up to the toe, to the top of the brain, your middle finger's there. Just press very, very lightly, and just follow the client's breathing. And as they breathe out, just lift off. And then cover the feet up, keep them warm. Go and get your client's drink of water, wash your hands, etc. Wash your hands first, then get the client's drink of water. And that's the end of the basic treatment sequence. Obviously, when we get to the treatment planning stage, you'll know how to create a bespoke treatment plan for your client. But this is what we will do. Every time we meet a client, we'd work every single area thoroughly, make notes about what we find, and then we can adapt and revise the session subsequently to suit that particular client's needs. Okay, thank you. Now, after treatment, sometimes your client can feel a bit spaced out, and if they're going to be driving straight away, you want to make sure that they're grounded and they're safe to drive. So to do this, what we're going to do, with the client's permission, is to touch the body from the top of the head down to the ground, literally bringing them back down to earth. So we're going to do this 3 times. Top of the head, slide all the way down, just very, very lightly. 1, 2, 3 times, all the way down. And then either side of the spine, don't touch the spine. We're going to come down 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to massage the shoulders, all around the shoulders, nice massage. Just rub, and rub down the arms and flick off. 3, and then just ask the client to have a shake. And by then they should be awake and ready to drive.